This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 155. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome back, my fellow protectors of the turn. Always happy to be here on Monday mornings with you and talk a little bit about Telemark. So, I just realized, I think next week, if I'm doing my math correctly, is the 3-year mark of the podcast. So that's pretty cool. I can't believe I've been doing it that long. But thanks for listening out there and checking out my, as I always call it, the Telemark Pirate Radio. Although one of my Russian Telemark friends that I had on the podcast a while back called it my pop radio show. So I'll live with that too. A little pirate, a little punk rock, a little pop radio. It's all good. So either way, thanks for being here this morning and checking things out. Always a pleasure to share Telemark with you on Monday mornings, share some ideas, share some thoughts, and all the other craziness that goes along with these fine drop knee turns that we all love. So I'm going to hop right into just kind of some updates as far as Newsroom and notes. Best way to kind of stay up on things, like I always say at the end of the podcast, is sign up for the mailing list. That's a great way to stay in touch with us. We've kind of moved to doing 2 emails per week, usually on Tuesdays and Fridays. Kind of keeps everyone going on what's happening with Freeheel Life, all the things that are associated with all our content that we're putting out, and just kind of a general way to keep your finger on the pulse. So please sign up for that. That's a great way to do it. Boot update. We're calling it Bootgate. For lack of a better term. I think I can thank Ashley for that one. And we don't have a specific ETA yet for getting our Scarpa boots. But we should know sooner than later, as we are already into November. But we're getting there. And thanks to all of you. We're still rocking and rolling here, keeping the doors open, the lights on, and getting what we do have available out the door to you fine folks that support us. And we really appreciate it. And that's what keeps us going. So thank you for supporting Freeheel Life and shopping at freeheellife.com and coming into the shop if you're local. Means a lot to us. And especially going into year number 8. I guess we're already in it for a couple months now. But thanks for supporting us, and we always appreciate that. We'll keep you up to date on the boots. Things that we do have in stock, just re-upped on all of our Volet skis. And we've got Outlaw X stocked up on those. In Wild, Majo 3.0, all the Volet 75 millimeter bindings. And yeah, there's a lot in here. And we got a ton of new merch. I guess I should mention that as well too, because I am pumped. Kind of teased it a little bit on the podcast. The Lake Superior Authority folks out in the Midwest hooked us up with the opportunity to print the Telly Stomp logo. It's a sweet bottom of a 75 millimeter boot. They had a little Midwest riff in the middle, and we put the Unity tracks in there. So big ups to them for giving us the opportunity to print that, and super stoked to have that in a couple t-shirts and hoodies. And also we are all restocked on the Telemark Evolution t-shirt. It's a fun 75 millimeter Evolution of boots, leather to T1. And we did those in long sleeves, couple t-shirt colors, and a hoodie this time. And they're going like hotcakes. So thanks for picking those up this past week. If you haven't gotten one, check them out. I think these will be popular designs for a long time to come, much like some of our other staples like the Jack, the famous, I say famous, I don't know, maybe that it's famous to us, probably just because it's been around, I think, since 2015. You've probably seen it. Jack is this lumberjack looking dude, big Freeheel life above it. So lots of fun lifestyle merchandise. We love seeing that on folks when they come in the shop or out in the wild. And if you got something, tag us in it on the old Instagram, Facebook. Email us a photo to customerservice@freeheellife.com. We love sharing it and showing people out there doing their thing and supporting Freeheel Life wherever they may be. On the content side of the house, Mr. Craig Dostie is back. We published Dostie's View this past week, and we're going to keep that rolling to the best of our ability. He doesn't live here in Utah, so I'm always working with him closely to keep the Dostie's View going. But typically, that comes out every week in the wintertime. And we're going to do our best kind of heading into the holiday season to have Mr. Dostie covering his viewpoints on fine equipment and talking about stuff. This past week, he did a fun little video about an F1 modification, boot modification to be more specific, with a nice duck butt to make it into an NTN compatible boot. It's a fun one. If you haven't been on our YouTube channel, go check it out. Subscribe there. Hit the bell for the notifications, and come along for the YouTube journey. Great. It's a great medium for us. Video, with being such a small crew, and just the nature of stuff these days with the intergalactic web, it lets us make a lot more content faster than writing it all out sometimes. So we've really started kind of leaning into the video to the best of our ability. And we hope you guys and girls love it as much as we do. And now that the slopes are opening and things are starting to fill in, we'll start pumping out some content of us skiing and our friends skiing, and keep some powder stoke going, because we know that's important and you want to watch that hopefully as well. But that's about what I got for Newsroom and Notes. We're going to run with the same schedule this upcoming week. Wednesday through Friday, open noon until 7 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And then we'll probably start looking to make some adjustments. We're running a little bit leaner crew this year, and just trying to kind of work out the hours to the best of our abilities. So if you came in the shop, and hopefully we weren't making you wait too long. I think we're doing a pretty good job so far, but always got to get a little warmed up, right? You know, and snow's falling, backcountry's going off. People were saying how good it was in the backcountry. I have not been out walking around yet, but I had a couple gentlemen chopping it up in the shop a couple days ago, and they said that it is awesome. Came in a little heavy on the bottom, light on the top, and there's quite a bit of snow out there in Utah, and resorts are opening. Game on. So hopefully it's the same wherever you may be as well, and it's Telemark season, y'all. Good times. So what is up today? I felt like last week's podcast, I talked about whether telemark skiing is relevant in 2022. Lots of feedback. You all rock out there. Lots of people wrote in. Lots of people responded to my Instagram post for the podcast, Facebook forum. People were hitting it up as well, kind of all over, and definitely got me thinking, and I appreciate all your responses. I know I asked for them, and ask and you shall receive. I got lots of good feedback and wanted to share some of that with you, and a couple other things, so we're going to make it a mailbag episode. Mailbag episode number 10. And at first I thought I was just going to kind of do a follow-up to whether telemark skiing's relevant, but then kind of started digging through the inbox, going through and kind of highlighted some stuff and thought, hey, I think this is a good time to just kind of go through all of this and catch everyone up and share some of the ideas that people sent in and whether they thought telemark skiing's relevant, a couple personal stories. Honestly, I should probably put these all in a book of some sort. All of your origin stories are amazing. I love reading them. I love hearing how you got into telemark skiing. The diversity is amazing. Anybody, from starting on the golf course to resort to backcountry, all sorts of equipment. It's super fun to read these, and hopefully I'm doing it justice by kind of sharing some of these. And I'm going to have to paraphrase some of these. That's what I mean is I really appreciate all the effort that goes in for all of you taking time to write into the podcast and just tell me what's going on. And I think a lot of, hopefully you all will appreciate it out there as well. And just gives you something to chew on during the week. And if you haven't sent stuff in, maybe you listen to episode number 154 and you want to let me know what's going on, you can always send me an email. And these mailbag episodes have worked really well to kind of put these all together and sort of talk about them a little more. So let's go. So I'm going to kind of start off specifically kind of going to some of these responses to whether telemark skiing is relevant in 2022 and kind of some feedback. This first email is from one of our local customers, Sabo. Shout out. Thanks for always writing in and giving suggestions, and also good to see you in the shop briefly last week. Always good to see. I think that's been what's fun the last few weeks for me is just seeing people. I love it. And seeing customers that I've known. I mean, when you're going 8 years into this, we built some really amazing friendships over these 8 years, and just that personal relationship of every one of you out there supporting us so we can support you. It's an awesome task that we've got on our shoulders, and you all make it worth it. So thank you. She wrote in and said, was listening to the podcast this week and wanted to share my comparison that I use instead of CrossFit. No shame to those CrossFit folks, but I think they have a bad reputation. So I compare tele to fly fishing versus regular fishing. I think it helps folks understand in a few ways. Number one, that there is a bit of a throwback or historical component to it. Two, that we know it is not as efficient and easy, but nonetheless is attractive. Number three, everyone brings their own spin to it. And number four, the community has a strong DIY influence, a la fly tying. I'm sure I'm missing some, but that usually gets the haters to do a bit of reflection, since for the most part, they have themselves considered fly fishing. See you around. Thanks, Sabo. The CrossFit example that I used last week, if you didn't listen to the podcast, I was kind of using that as a way to sort of segment out sort of a comparison in fitness. And it's kind of funny because it spurred on a lot of, I think fly fishing, first off, I agree. I think fly fishing is, I have used this one actually in the past because we have Miles, our shop manager, is a big fly fisherman. His father, there's actually a lot of fly fishermen. And then I even say like the leather boot guys, it's like Tankara, even more niche within fly fishing. I think that's a good one. And yeah, I totally agree. I think fly fishing is another good comparison. Another one that came up was fixed gear bicycles. that I totally think that that fits too. Single speed. I think I'm not a mountain biker. I like mountain biking. I just don't. I know, surprising. Not really what I'm doing in the summer. Doing other things, but I think there's kind of a whole scene within mountain biking that's like single speed as well. Probably fits the Telemark personality as well. The one I used to always use back in the day was Telemark skiers are the bass players in the band. If you don't play bass or you don't play in a band, maybe you don't get that. But you're not looking to be the lead guitar player. You're sort of like the rhythm guy holding it down. There's so many things I think from a personality standpoint that sort of play in. But Sabo, thank you for chiming in on that, because I think those are really good points. So, how many of you are fly fishermen out there? I'm curious. Maybe that's a real thing. It's just all Telemark skiers are fly fishermen, which I fly fish too. I finally got a fly fishing rig this summer. Little brother got me back into it, so I'm relearning. I am not tying my own flies yet though, so I'll have to get on that side of the business. So I had a couple Instagram. I'm kind of going across all the platforms. This is what's also been super fun, is not just getting emails. I love those, but also now that I'll put stuff on Instagram, on my own Instagram at Josh Nomadson. Usually I'm sort of doing like collaboration posts with Freeheel Life or whatever, just so it kind of gets out there more. And it's been fun to see people sort of throw some comments out there as well, on top of our Facebook forum. Another great place to kind of get people's take on things. One of the things, this was another comparison that someone wrote and said, it's like windsurfing, always the harder way to enjoy the best. So I could see that. Honestly, I've never windsurfed. I would assume the more modern windsurfing probably has kind of an old school aspect to it. I'm sure kiteboarding is probably the newer version of that. So that kind of came up. Somebody else said, more than ever it's relevant. F Alpine. So I thought that was kind of funny too, but kind of just everything on this, there's a lot of hashtags and stuff, which kind of made it funny, but I like that one. This one comment kind of got me. It said, this was a Tiger Stripe 40. Love it. Said, yeah, it's relevant, but if the industry doesn't step up and make some more NTN boots, it's gonna die. And I politely responded and said, I don't think it's gonna die. That would be pretty difficult. I agree. I mean, if you hear anything consistent on the podcast, it's one, let's try not to put people in charge of making our equipment that don't understand what we all need, which is a consistent theme. Also always talking about what we can put together. You know, if someone really wants to get in the boot business out there and you're a telemarketer and you're willing to get into it, by all means, I would love to see it. Make sure you understand the business well. But I kindly pointed out, I'm like, it's not going to die. Just like I said last week, as long as Telemark equipment's out there, Telemark skiers are going to keep rocking it. They're going to keep pushing it forward. And I'm just a believer. Things work out. They always do. It's one foot in front of the other. If we all keep doing it, we all keep passing it on, we all keep protecting the turn, the pieces are going to fall into place. I'm a big believer in that. Our community is so strong and awesome that that's the core flame in the middle. You know, we just have to kind of keep the fire going, and we can bitch and moan all we want about, equipment, whatever. And sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not. But we just got to keep moving, keep doing this thing. And there's plenty of equipment for us to fill in the blanks until it all comes along. And it's all going to work out. So I tried to kind of point that out. And the last comment I was just going to kind of mention on the Instagram was, after listening to you talk about boots on the podcast, it got me thinking, why doesn't someone pick up proven boot designs and re-release them? Full Tilt did it with the old Reichly Flex On, and now K2 will continue it. And I thought this was kind of a valid point too. Obviously, I know these boots because of just Alpine in the peripheral vision, I guess, over the years. The Reichly boots. Honestly, I haven't Alpine skied since '93, but I remember the Reichly boots. Like, pretty sure Glenn Plake used to shred on those. And then when Full Tilt came, it was basically just a remake of this boot that kind of got repurposed into more of like a freestyle boot. And the Full Tilt boots, you'd see them on a lot of the best park skiers in Alpine and whatnot. I don't know the whole story there, but I understand the point. I wrote this gentleman back and was just kind of saying, yeah, that makes sense, but there's not really a lot of old boot designs that potentially could come back. And I just pointed out that the concept of that could make sense. Really, the only boot that there's two things I kind of shared with him. I said, look, Garmont was acquired by the Garmont Telemark molds were acquired by Scott, and they really they just rebranded the Garmont Prophet and kind of kept that going. They didn't really innovate on it. And I was always kind of bummed they didn't do that, because I think that's, in a way, kind of proves my point that a big Alpine manufacturer, for whatever reason, I just feel like when it's that big, it's just a line item on a budget. If you don't have the right person pushing it, they're not really going to understand the data points. They're not going to look at how many people are out there. They're not going to look at how to compete. And unfortunately, I think Scott could have been, they obviously make boots, they make equipment. They're a massive company, and the potential is there for someone inside of that business, albeit gargantuan. I mean, it's a huge business, right? And equipment manufacturer. But we never really saw Scott jump in the deep end and make a Telemark boot. It was mostly cosmetic, buckles, colors, rebrand. And honestly, I've said it before, Scott, as far as we can tell, Scott's not manufacturing boots any longer. And probably what we're seeing on the market is just stuff that is, when it's gone, it's gone. That's my theory. I don't have any hard evidence of that. I'm just speculating, but that's what I'm sensing. So that was the one example I gave him. And then the other example that's always floating out there is the Black Diamond molds. Black Diamond obviously got into making Telemark boots, and they're, they did a good job. A lot of people, I was actually rereading an article in the early 2000s, probably around 2002-ish, somewhere around there. A lot of people may have forgotten or didn't know that Black Diamond was actually the Scarpa North American distributor up until that point. And they, if you wanted Scarpa boots, they came through Black Diamond, and there's you can Google it. I was just rereading this. It was an old outdoor retailer article or something along those lines. Peter Metcalf was talking about kind of, hey, we're not going to be doing Scarpa. Scarpa's going to go off on their own. And obviously Telemark, Black Diamond then set up their own boot manufacturing and made Telemark boots. And you ended up with kind of an innovative idea back in the day. They did the BOA liners, which were really cool. If you don't know what BOA is, it's kind of like a cinched down lacing mechanism, kind of with a wire lace inside the boot. Snowboard boots had used them, and they incorporated that. They had the custom, they had the push, they had the I'm blanking out here. Custom, push, and the seeker. I feel like I'm missing one. My apologies. That I can't remember. I feel like I'm missing one though. But either way, Black Diamond gets out of boot making years and years ago. They did some good things. Those 75 millimeter molds are out there. And I may have mentioned it a week or two ago. You know, we even got approached at one point by Dale Boot, which is kind of a custom boot manufacturer in Salt Lake, and they have the molds. They acquired them at some point, and you know, someone said, "Hey, do you think you could do something with these?" And to me, that wasn't one. I don't even think we have the capability currently to do something like that. Second off, even if someone were to take on those BD molds, could you make 75 millimeter boots? Highly likely, because the molds are made for 75 millimeter boots. I think to modify those and repurpose them into an NTM product, which I think is, again, what we're always saying, it's like trying to get it into a single norm. You know, we talked about this a lot. It's how you fasten to the NTN. All it is it's a different way the boot goes into the binding, and that binding fastens you to the ski. I don't know. You know, I'm not an engineer. Could someone repurpose those into an NTN boot of some sort? Maybe. All you engineers out there, I hope your brains are turning. And if you want to buy BD molds, they're there. I'm sure someone will sell them to you. And I would love that. If someone really wants to take a stab at it, they're there. So I appreciated that comment. Thought it was worth bringing up. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that somebody could repurpose something. It's just that there's not that many boots that have existed in the past similar to the Reichle Flex-On to full tilt kind of model. And unless I'm missing something that I'm not thinking about, I mean, there's basically been 4 plastic Telemark boot manufacturers, and that's kind of it. So I don't really know I don't know how that could work. So worth bringing up. Thought it was an interesting comment, and wanted to share it with you. Okay, so now I'm diving into a little bit of a longer email. I'm gonna paraphrase a bunch of this and just kind of give you the basics of it. It's from a gentleman named Dave, who's from Australia. So shout out to the Australians. I know you guys are holding it down there. Literally. And I'm just going to kind of browse through this and then get sort of to the meat that it talks about his thoughts on the relevance of Telemark. But he kind of starts off, he's 64, started Telemark skiing in the Australian backcountry in 1984. So obviously he's been Telemark skiing for a very long time. And he's done everything, Nordic instruction, worked at ski areas. He said dishwashing was the best job, more ski time. As a fellow dishwasher on the dish crew at one point in my life, I will agree with that, especially if you get the night shift. So all you youngsters out there, if you want to be a ski bum, try to get that dish job. I thought that was funny that he put that in there, and I was like, hell yeah, I agree with that. His home resort's Mount Hotham, and he gives some good history I would love to dig into. He talks a little bit about Bruce down at Wilderness Sports. Mentioned him a couple times. He's down in Perisher. But he's also talking about these some cool early history with Anders and Stefan Nielsen, who spent their winters down there at Hotham. And I guess there was like some really cool, this is total sidebar, But he talks about how they used to have this kind of a demo festival, and they were these Telemark skiers were skiing giant machine bumps and leaping through hoops of fire. So bring that back wherever. I mean, we should do that literally every resort. Telemark skiers jumping through hoops of fire. I can appreciate that. But I kind of wanted just to jump to the more relevant part of this, which is his thoughts on why is Telemark still relevant. And this is what he said. The Telemark movement is a totally natural movement that appears and is used in many other sports and daily life. It's used in surfing, the drop knee turn on a longboard, tube stance on a shortboard. It's used in fencing, cricket, volleyball, bowling, etc. It's a totally natural, dynamic movement. It allows every joint and muscle to work naturally during the flow of turns down the hill. The boots allow us to walk naturally and during tele-touring. And he says, don't call it backcountry, call it Telemark touring. So I might actually start doing that. I kind of like that because it is it really is like a distinguishing factor. If you tour these days and you want to make Telemark turns, it really is Telemark touring at this point. Just because what we talked about is you're not just accessing the backcountry with Telemark equipment for no reason right now, you know? So I thought that was pretty cool. He goes on, we are so caught up with Alpine Touring being a competitor and we lost out to them. We haven't. As Craig Dostie says, they can't do a totally natural flowing turn. They can't even kick and glide either. The cross-country diagonal stride is an advanced technique and works great with Telemark and cross-country downhill skis. Alpine touring is so easy. They shuffle and do easy P-turns. So much easier to P-turn these days. We are too caught up with AT. And this is the part I like. He said, split boarders don't have the same hangups. It's heavier, more hassle, more mucking around, but they get to do the turn they want to do. They are not hung up about AT. I kind of love that. I honestly have never even thought about that, but split boarding is probably similar. I mean, no one gives them a hard time. So I thought that was kind of an interesting point that he made. And then he goes on, I think it's a real North American hang up. So many teleskiers in Oz and in Europe, AT has always been bigger. There's also a wider dynamic of telemarkers. And he kind of goes on, but I wanted to bring that up. I think it's really cool, and maybe it is a North American hang up. You know, I know we talk about it a lot. It's obviously a topic of conversation constantly. You know, we're always harping on it, you know, this whole AT versus Telemark and yada, yada, yada. But I kind of thought that was an interesting point, and I liked what he brought up about the snowboarders. Dave, awesome email. I know I didn't read the entire thing I on air, but I did read all that you sent, and you know, he just said thanks so much for allowing me to respond, and thank you so much for writing in and taking the time to break all this down. I learned so much from each of these emails as people send stuff in and they give their history and where they live in the world and what Telemark looks like to them and when they started and how they got into it, what it looks like now. And honestly, if anything makes me feel like Telemark's relevant, it's all of you listening out there every week. And for those of you that took the time to write in, I love that even more. Lets me know what's going on out there and just, again, helps me keep fresh ideas going and understand more about what's going on in Telemark, which is super, super important that we keep up on that. So this next one, I wanted to read probably all of this one. It's a little bit longer, but I think there's some really cool stuff in here as well. And kind of touches on some interesting points that I think are important. It says, hey, Josh, I just listened to your Is Telemark Relevant in 2022 episode. You mentioned that you wanted to hear about people's Telemark origin stories and their relationship to the turn. As I enter my 18th season entirely on Telemark, the points you made about the newer generations of skiers telemarking for the turn struck home to me. I grew up in Northwest Colorado, and from a very young age, I was skiing around the woods on leather boots and skinny skis. My family loves wooden skis, and we would always collect them at yard sales and ski swaps whenever we saw them. I spent many years on a tiny pair of wooden bonas with steps carved in the bottom and a spring binding that didn't have any kind of rat trap over the toe. These weren't great, but they served me for many years. I remember my excitement through when I was finally tall enough for the shortest pair of adult skis with a wax pocket, double camber, and a beautiful red lacquer finish. We would always try to make turns while out meadow skipping, but these were typically survival turns, and I never really felt the true art of the turn. I always had alpine skied and then snowboarded when I was on the ski mountain, but over time I found myself feeling bored with snowboarding. Luckily, Steamboat had a great Telemark ski team, and when I was 13, I got a season rental of a pair of K2 Small Worlds and made the full-time switch to Telemark. I never looked back since. From the start, it provided a challenge and experience I had never gotten alpine skiing or snowboarding. I started and continued telemarking because of a love of the turn. I feel so fortunate to have started telemarking during the mid-2000s tele boom. I think the folks that were my age were the first wave of new telemark skiers who got hooked not because of the backcountry access, but because of the turn. I'm sure having a great community of 20 plus other teenage tele skiers and great coaches helped a lot too. People often ask me why I tele, and I don't have the tidy answer that I think they expect. I could definitely be a more powerful and quote-unquote extreme skier if I alpined, but at this point, I can ski all the terrain I want to. That's not really the point, though. I love that every run I take, I can always find little things to work on with my technique. This means that I can have fun skiing groomers with my 76-year-old dad, who still teles as well, because I can continue to play with my technique. There is also the hard-to-describe feeling of the quote-unquote turn that I will never be able to adequately explain, but it's so much more enjoyable to me than the parallel turn. Ultimately, I don't feel a deep need to explain why I love the feeling of tele so much, and if people don't want to try it, I'm not going to proselytize to them about why they need to. But whenever someone is interested and excited about tele, I want to do everything I can to get them to feel the same joy I do all these years later. Spread Telemark, Dusty. I love this email for a lot of reasons. Probably resonates a lot with me too, because, there's sort of this early history, kind of the family ski thing, just walking around on skis. I can relate to that. I mean, that's kind of how I grew up, way before I even ever tried to go alpine skiing, always had the cross country skis, walking around the backyard, But I love, and I know the program he's talking about because I used to go show my Telemark movies in Steamboat. I mean, it really was. There was a lot of these programs in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. Steamboat. If you haven't listened to the episode with K.O. Ogilvy from Colorado Rocky Mountain School, that's another great one. There's still that program there. I think what I've always seen is when we can get young telemark skiers on equipment and there's a group of them, there's really a good residual effect, of that exposure at a young age and having, your crew, like he said, 20 Telemark skiers that are all young teenage kids running around. I really think that has like such a positive impact. And the fact that he could get a season rental, he talked about the K2 Small World. It was actually a K2 Telemark kids twin tip. And again, it's access to the gear, access to the experience. And I think it's so rad that after all these years, he's still loving it. And it kind of started with that experience with the kids program. And I can't emphasize that enough. That's, if we want to grow Telemark, that's a great place to start. There's such a wide variety of age groups that need to get equipment and instruction and just something that's cool, And I've seen that. I've coached some kids programs here in Utah that the groups aren't actually around anymore, but I can't emphasize that enough. And I love that he kind of points that out. And then, the final part of this email is kind of talking about, the need to not really explain, but if someone does want to know more about it, you really do want to share it. And I think that is something about Telemark, at least my opinion. Obviously, I talk to you all every Monday because it's not to proselytize. It's not to necessarily do that. It's just that, in a similar fashion, I love talking about it too. Like when people are interested and want to listen, I think it's cool that we have a community that wants to share that with people. And it's not about forcing it on anybody or anything like that, but it's just such a great experience that you kind of want people to try it. The people that resonate with it, you want to help them out and give them information. So, Dusty, thanks for that email. I love it. It's got a bunch of awesome parts to it. So, thanks for writing in and let me share your experience, and I'm sure a lot of other people can hear that and resonate with it too. So kind of hop into the next one. One of our East Coast of the United States listeners. Quick background. He says, 49-year-old male, Telly since 1989, East Coaster, mostly in Connecticut, but now in Vermont. Still on 75 millimeter, but NTN curious. I love that. Right off the bat, he says, hey, it's all about the turn. The turn. And he goes on, I was riding the chairlift at the start of last season with a good friend who alpines. We were talking about the previous season. I told her how I remember individual, memorable turns of the previous year. I didn't go into it, but I remember the snow conditions, which trail, and where on the trail that the turns occurred. The feel of the turn. She could not understand how I could remember individual turns. Good memories of powder days, friends on the hill, maybe notorious wipeouts or outlandish characters on a shared chairlift ride were the memories that stood out to her. It's my belief that Telemark skiers understand what I'm talking about. The turn is Telemark. Telemark is relevant to me. That's it. I am chasing that feeling of a turn that implants its feel into my memory. I don't know, but I don't think alpine turns can do that. Snowboard, maybe. Their turn is pretty cool too. Chris. Thanks for that email, Chris. I love this. Totally agree with it. I think it's all about the turn. The part that sticks out to me about this is I love that I can just imagine sitting with your friend and the way you're explaining it, I never really thought about it, but I think it really is the turn, because the fact that we can kind of break down these memories and there's just this thing that sort of becomes part of the annual experience of telemark skiing. And I've never really seen someone write kind of this in this dichotomy, of how difficult that I just really thought it was a great breakdown of why telemark is relevant to you and just kind of how it affects the way you look at the mountain and look at your experience versus maybe an alpine skier. So I don't know if it's like that for everybody, but I really liked how this email was, and it was really cool to read and just kind of hear someone else's thoughts on that and kind of what that meant to him. So Chris, thanks for sending that in. Also, Chris brought up an interesting point. He's like, I want to be on the podcast. And I've been toying around with this a little bit. I obviously can do solo podcasts. I try to dig up as many cool history, characters, and stuff like that. We like to talk about gear. But Chris was sort of pitching himself to be on the podcast, not because he's doing any events or whatever, but just saying, hey, like, this would be fun to just talk Telemark. And I've toyed around with the idea of maybe doing sort of a spread Telemark podcast where just listeners, and maybe hopping on with people from different zones, and let me know what you think. Would that be fun for you to hear? Because I kind of started thinking, I'm like, man, so many cool people write in. I get all these awesome stories and thoughts. It might be kind of fun every once in a while to sort of hop on the phone with someone that I don't know, and just talk to listeners out there and just break it down. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So if you think it would be fun too, let me know. Maybe we can start doing like a spread Telemark locals only podcast and kind of dig into some locals and see what's going on with that. So let me know what you think on that. If you think it's a good idea, I would love to try that and see how it goes. So kind of hopping into the next podcast, the next email. Hang in there with me, folks. This is from Jeff. Says, hi, I just listened to today's podcast. Nice one. I'm still on 75 millimeter, but during the winter of 2020, I skied exclusively on a pair of Europa 99s, E99s, a solo extremes, and 3-pin bindings. Which, just for reference, this is what I started on in 93, and they were from like the mid 80s. So the fact that, big props to you, Jeff, for starting on that equipment in 2020. Legit. He says he crashed a lot, but it didn't take long to get pretty dang dialed on that setup, as long as the conditions were reasonable. Nowadays, I ski T2 Ecos and Volet switchbacks. I chose this setup mainly because it was what I could afford. Of course, it is a completely different feeling compared with E99s, 3-pins, and leathers. What Josh and Dosty were saying, especially towards the end of the episode, was the same thing, but just related to 75 millimeter and NTN. It seems pretty basic to me. Different setups will yield different experiences, but it's all just teleskiing. Jeff. Yep. I love that. I love that you got what you got out there and did it. That's what it's all about. And I think you got the point, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's all just teleskiing. So thanks for that email, Jeff. Love it. And thanks for chiming in with a little bit of your experience. I always appreciate hearing that stuff. So I'm kind of getting into some emails. These are emails kind of outside of last week's podcast, talking about the relevance of Telemark and whatnot. But they've been kind of sitting in my inbox, and I was like trying to find the right time to sort of, throw these in the mix with a mailbag episode. And this one's from Josh. He goes into a little bit of his own story, but I thought the question that he asked was pretty important, and I wanted to address it just because I thought it was good. So let me read his question, then I'll kind of give you my thoughts on it. He says, my question is, why don't you guys talk much about Bishop bindings when discussing options? Much of what you bring up is 22 designs, Volet, and Majo. Also, when talking skis, Bishop doesn't usually come up. or the Fay brothers over on the East Coast at their Telemark Down shop, who have been producing Telemark specific skis for a number of years now. I know you don't advertise your skis as Tele specific, but you are designing them to ski awesome as Telemark skis, which would leave really just you, the Fay brothers, and Bishop making skis with Telemark skiers in mind. Just curious as to why they don't come in discussions of setup options. Neither does Crispy when you're discussing boot options. I love your show and just wanted to see if you would be interested in sharing your opinions on stuff I talked about. I also have a pair of the Bishop Gonzo skis with their BMF 3, I don't know if that's right, BMF 75 millimeter bindings showing up soon. And look to make these my look to make these my daily drivers when on patrol. And hope I didn't make a mistake. With no way of demoing in my area, I'm left to read reviews, look at dimensions and such to make an educated Hail Mary. Thanks so much for your time and reading my novel. Can't stop, won't stop dropping my knees. Josh. I've gotten a couple emails over the last couple years about this. And, we don't, I'm going to give you the simple answer of kind of where I'm at, where we're at with the business. The simple answer to this, and people have written in about this and they're like, why don't you talk about this or talk about that or talk to this person or whatever. The very simple answer is this. In the beginning of the podcast, I was covering a lot more broader range of topics. A lot, it was broader, and that's kind of how I started. And, as we've kind of progressed forward, Freeheel Life, we're a brand, we have a retail shop, and, we're promoting the products that we currently sell here. And ultimately, I totally understand, like, we want to spread Telemark. It's so important to me that Telemark grows. And, I've mentioned it briefly, maybe a month or two ago. We want to affect change in Telemark and promote it, but we want to do it through our business and our brand. And so, there's other people doing stuff out there, and, we are a business and we've got to promote our business, and it doesn't really help to always promote everyone in everything going on in Telemark. And, some people may disagree with that. I get it. This is our brand of Telemark. This is the Freeheel Life. And, moving forward, I mean, this is really going to be, just like the podcast is an extension of the business, just like a retail shop, Bluebird Day Gear now, everything that we're doing, we're promoting our business. And that's kind of the simple answer of it. No hate to anybody else out there doing their thing, but it's just kind of a brand thing. And so, there's so many things that, in my opinion, need to happen in Telemark for it to grow. And in my personal opinion, I think the best thing we can do is have strong brands that are making stuff for Telemark skiers. And I realize there's not a ton of information out there about certain things. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of it per se, but basically the stuff that we carry here, and the affiliations that we have, and obviously Freeheel Life specific stuff, that's what we're going to talk about, and my hope is that it encourages other brands to also do that, and that way it gives more options for people to listen to, and it puts the responsibility on the brands to get out there and do the heavy lifting themselves. And that's kind of the simple answer. I totally get it, because there's so many. That's why I'm always saying there's plenty of work to be done in Telemark, both creating brands, creating product, and, We're just trying to do our best here. I'm trying to do my best with the podcast to build our business and have a great retail shop and cover the things that we're doing. And that's kind of the simple answer to it. So like I said, some people may be like, no, you got to talk about everything and whatever. Yeah, but that's just, I really just think that's the responsibility of each brand. And I hope that by having a good podcast, by having a good retail shop, that inspires these other people to do the same thing for their own brand of Telemark. Honestly, we can't make everybody happy with everything that we're doing. It's just not possible. But I think there's so much more that can be done by these other groups, other brands. And I get it. We're all small. And I think competition's the best way to get us to all rise to the top and bring people what they need. And that's my hope. So hopefully that makes sense to you out there. Hopefully that answers Josh's question. And hopefully that spurs some other people to kind of do some more stuff. So thanks for the question, Josh. I really appreciate that. So this next one is from Dimitri. And he says, Josh, I love the episode and the discussion about gear, old versus new. I'm an East Coast tele faker. I don't smell funny. And gear options are limited. It is quite nice with the recent conversations that you guys are sympathetic to the guys that are maybe stuck in the 75 millimeter world because of cost or reluctance. I fall into both categories because the parts, when I do break something, not if, are difficult to have available, and I could be stranded with no setup. Yes, I'm a single quiver skier, and it's easy to have backup parts for 75 millimeter at home or in the pack. Living in CT, I'm fortunate to have the quote unquote other guys located in the state, but there have been times where you guys sent me stuff faster. Still, I could be out for a couple of days, and a couple of days in Connecticut is a big deal if the skiing is good that week. Just wanted to let you know who is listening, and we appreciate it. Dimitri. P.S. Yeah, my son, 11 years old, wants to telly, and he is a ripper on skis. So this may be the year he switches over. The torch will be passed down. Maybe. Awesome email, Dimitri. First off, I hope your 11-year-old gets on tellies this year and continues to rip it up. I love hearing that. And, I wanted to read that one just because this is what it's all about, and I want to make sure that my podcast and Freeheel Life, we welcome everybody. And that's so important to me, is when we do any sort of content or when you walk in the shop, you feel welcome. That's so, so important to me because, not everyone in the world has 10 pairs of skis and 10 pairs of bindings and a million pairs of boots and whatever. And I think this is a good call out to that. And it's so important to me that if you're listening out there, whether you're trying to get into Telemark or you've done it forever or you've got the latest and greatest gear or whatnot, what this is all about to me and what I'm always trying to hit on is we're a good community of people. The brand of Telemark that I'm always trying to push is, hey, it's cool. However you do it, whatever you do, we're trying to help you out. And that's how I want it to be when you walk in, you walk into our retail space or call us on the phone, is you feel welcome, and I think that's so important as a business. That's so important to me, is just, you feel good, talking to us on the phone, and you feel like you're getting the expertise that you need. And whether you live in Connecticut or you live somewhere in Europe or Australia or Japan or whatever, there's a contact point. And if you vibe with our brand of Telemark, then, that's great. And that's what we want to do is we want to do the best that we can for our business. And Dimitri, thanks for letting me know that you're listening. And I hope there's other people listening out there, and I hope no one ever feels, scared to call or, ask questions or whatnot. We're here to help. We're a small crew in the grand scheme of things, but we want to provide good service, and that's a big part of what we do is we're just trying to provide a service. We don't always do everything right. We're human, and we try to keep up with the pace, which is hard sometimes because there's a lot of need out there. But we're doing our best, and I always appreciate getting these emails, and not only sympathetic, you're part of the family. So that's what means the most to us is that we're here for you. So thank you. This next one is so great, and I couldn't wait to share this one. This is one of my favorites. Says, "Hi, I'm Telly Julia, aka Wipeout Queen. I'm 11 plus 2 years old because I don't want to be a teenager. I live in Nordegg, Alberta, and ski at Lake Louise. I've been telemark skiing since I was 11 last year. Oh, I'm sorry. I've been telemark skiing since I was 11. Last year, I skied 30 times or more. I also ski on G3 Targa bindings and love the Telly podcasts. The day that Alpine died for me was November 22nd, 2021. I used to Telly ski half the day and Alpine ski the other half day. The day Alpine died, I telemark skied all day. I've telemark skied all day before, but that day it just felt right to telemark all day. When I was skiing down a run, I decided I did not need training heels anymore. Ever since then, I've never locked my heel down and never plan to. Like they say, free your heel, ski for real. From Telly Julia." And I don't even know what to say with this one. This is what it's all about, and I was pretty close to the same age. I love the 11 plus 2 years old because I don't want to be a teenager. Yeah, don't rush it. You gotta live it up while you're young. So don't rush it. But Julia, thanks for listening to the podcast. I'm glad you're digging it. And I had proposed this question. Hey, send me when the day Alpine died for you, and she did it. November 22nd, 2021. She went all in, and I love that. So congratulations, Julia, from Nordegg, Alberta, skiing Lake Louise. It's good to know that you took the training heels off and you are now all in. So congratulations from me and all of the Freeheel Life family. We're so stoked for you, and love that you took the time to write this email. It means a lot to me to see this. And also reading emails from someone in the same podcast. I'm reading emails from someone who's in their 60s, someone who's in their 40s, and someone who is 11 plus 2 years old. And I think that's a good one to end on. I'm totally touched getting emails like that, and all the ones I read today, but I felt like that was a really good one to end on. And that pulls at the heartstrings for me. I love it, and I hope you love that too. And hopefully the mailbag episode was great, and you enjoyed hearing some of your fellow listeners' stories, questions, and the like. I always enjoy these mailbag episodes just because I can kind of bring to life some of these thoughts that are coming in, responses to stuff. And like always, I love hearing all these origin stories, how people got into this, what you think about the topics that we're discussing on the podcast, and what you like. So that helps me kind of stay in tune with things, and I couldn't do it without you on so many levels. So just before signing off, like I said at the beginning, we're putting our weekly emails out, usually on Tuesdays and Fridays, to kind of keep you in the loop with what's going on. Now that the snow's coming, we're going to have, more content, more ski content, especially, because that's always fun when we can go out and share some snow with you all. Like I said, Dosty's back, Dosty's View podcast every Monday. We're just going to keep on going. So, if you want to find me online, I'm always on the Instagram at Josh Nomadson. You can check out at Freeheel Life and freeheellife.com for all your shopping needs. It's starting to be a holiday season too, so if you've got a Telemark skier in your life besides yourself, or you maybe just want to buy something for yourself as well. Parts, used equipment, new equipment, lifestyle stuff, we got it. So you can hit our crew up at customerservice@freeheellife.com. Email me any thoughts on the episode at podcast@freeheellife.com. If you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, please take a second to rate and review. Helps us get in front of more eyeballs and keep that Freeheel Life stoke going with other people. So I'll be back next Monday. I hope you have a great week. It's been awesome talking to you, and hope you're finding some snow this week and it's getting on the schedule. And until next week, spread Telemark always, my friends. See you later.